Not like I'd press record and then not tell you, and then we just end up saying something really scandalous.
So that's going to end up burping down the microphone again, isn't it? Actually, my favourite blooper was the one where Devon said, punctuated by squeaky toy,
And
and
then
goes
goes
to
to start
squeaking his ball.
squeaking in punctuation after I start speaking. Because he knew. He
Yeah,
knows.
he knew. Little good egg.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Path publication. My name's Finn,
And I'm Andie.
and we're back again. We're Devonless this time. How have you been, Andy? What's new
I'm
with
actually
you?
missing Devon now.
Yeah, it did feel a bit like... It felt like he was a teacher and we were the school kids just going like, notice me, please notice me. It's like, give me all of your inspiration, give me all of your work. Yeah, a lot of people, by lots of things as well, really enjoyed that episode because it is currently sitting at the second most viewed of our vodcasts on the Path Publication YouTube channel.
It's performing quite well. I put it down to the really smiley picture that we've got in the thumbnail.
He makes us look all unprofessional. If you're watching the minisode from the last upload we did a couple of weeks ago, I plugged the YouTube channel. So now you can listen to the Path Publication on our website, on Spotify, and also on YouTube now, just by searching Path Publication.
We're expanding.
It's the one that has our faces on it, which you all know what they look like in a podcast or a podcast audio-based medium.
We look like this.
We're the ones that look like us.
We're the ones that look like we don't know what we're doing anymore.
Completely unprofessional now. It's all kind of like all in flames. But Andy, why are we here again? Why have you summoned me back to the Publication Podcast Towers?
Because it's Friday night and I haven't got any friends.
Oh, I'm your friend. But no, why are we actually here, Andy?
We're actually here to talk about structure today. How we structure our writing.
Do we structure our writing?
And not just, we don't even structure our podcast.
Okay, end of podcast. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Path Publication. And good night. No, come back. Don't go anywhere. Fine, we're not done yet.
The late film, we've lost the audience, they've gone.
Okay, so I know that Evolved Pixel's watching, so just for him, we're going to do it on structure. Every TV show, every film that's out there at the moment, maybe even novels as well, they have to abide by a certain structure in order for viewers to kind of relate to a character, relate to the story, not get bored or switch off and feel like they've been lost. At least that's what it's like in a nutshell. What's your experiences with structure, Andy?
Not very much. I don't really structure as well as I could do. Everything's got a beginning, a middle, and end.
It's always a good start.
It's just bits around it.
I mean, we've already mentioned this before in a previous podcast, but I am a bit of a planner, whereas Andy is a lot of a pantser right now.
Yes, absolutely the pantser. Which means that if I want to get creative with the structure and just work up on something that's not just straightforward, something begins, something changes, something happens, something climaxes the end, I have to do a lot more work, I guess, than what you do.
You say that, but I think both methods are helpful towards the script writing process. They both work in their own way. Because I used to be a pantser as well. I used to be somebody who didn't have a plan, just wrote from a complete stream of consciousness, and then the only thing for me is that if I did that, it wouldn't end. It would just carry on going and going and going and going. There would be no set ending. So I wouldn't finish a script.
Your structure is beginning, something happens, the middle.
Something big action happens, more back to the middle, more middle. Longest middle in the entire world. We might think about the middle, but no, go back to the middle.
You're basically like the filler of a pie, just no crust.
But more recently, I've started to do more planning. So I do things like I will write out all the story beats in a particular script. So I've got at least a framework to work from when it comes to actually writing the script out itself.
Do you have prescriptive beat, like so many set beats, like Save the Cat? Or do you make them up? You've got as many beats as you fancy.
I tend to just put as many beats as there is in that story length. I don't set it to a certain amount of pages needs to be by this certain beat, certain amount of beats need to be by this certain minute or anything like that. I'll just write it out as much as I can in beat form, So if you don't know what beat means, it's basically just a point of action in your script is a beat. So I will write all those beats out in the script from beginning to end, and then that will give me a framework to work from when it comes to actually writing the big main one out. Or at least writing the first draft out, should we say.
The one where you just vomit everything and hope it makes sense.
I'm currently in the middle of a vomit draft at the moment with my time leap script. And I'm enjoying it. Don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying it. But it's still draft one, so everything's a little bit kind of fluid at the moment. It can all change when we go to the second draft.
How are you writing a time leap within set structure? Because surely time leaping goes against, all prescriptive structures.
Well, funny you should mention that. We can speak about that a little bit later on in the podcast. It is one of the notes I have on my list to talk about relating to linear and non-linear storytelling. But yeah, stay tuned and I'll tell you about that more.
So for now, the linear structure.
I think everyone knows what the most commonly used structure in any script, any story, any novel.
Oh, I know this one. Misa. I know.
Yes, Andie at the back. One with a red hat.
Oh. Is it the 3-act structure?
Yes, it is. It's the 3-act structure. Everyone knows that everything has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's very, very basic. Every story has that. There's an inciting incident, something happens, and then the finale. The hero will defeat the villain, or the villain will defeat the hero, and the main quest of that story is completed by the ending.
When you're writing in a 3-act structure, do you follow the idea that the first 30 pages, roughly, of a 90-minute screenplay is the first act? It's a shorter first act. Establish everything nice and fast. Then you've got around about 60 pages to work that second act. And then again, another 30 pages to finalise your third act.
And that is the hard and fast rule when it comes to the 3-act structure, yes. Which actually puts me in a bit of a good mood, because on my script at the moment, I've been worrying that I've been writing too much, and I'm not even at page 30 yet. So that actually makes me feel a lot better. Obviously, of course, people have innovated over the times, and those kind of strict 30-page sections on a 90-minute screenplay can blend a little bit. You can blur around those numbers. Not massively, but you can.
So, have you read Save the Cat?
I have not read Save the Cat. I know you mentioned it a couple of podcasts back, but can you just give me the cliff notes of what Save the Cat is?
So, Save the Cat's the beat sheet, and Save the Cat, the idea of writing, is it's kind of like intermingles. The idea of Save the Cat is you get your protagonist to do something inherently likeable within that first few moments. Think Katniss Everdeen in Hunger Games, how she volunteered for the Reaping in Primrose's place. So she was established as an angsty, moody teenager, but she did this thing that's like self-sacrifice, instantly likeable. She saved the cat, which sets her up as a more likeable protagonist for the rest of the film. Whereas the Save the Cat beat sheets, slightly different. Blake Snyder's idea of there's 15 beats within a screenplay, and the first 5 beats are the first act. So those first 30 pages.
In that first act, what will those 5 beats be relating to?
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. 6 beats. The first beat is the opening image. It's got to be a strong opening image that sets the entire tone of the film, that sets the tone of the character, the world. The second beat needs to happen around about page 5 or on page 5. Now, it's very, very exact. There's not a lot of wiggle room in this.
Is it for people who absolute solid, strict structure, just kind of get through the points and get out?
Yeah. So page 5, you need to state the theme. If something's going to happen, state it by page 5. Say the character needs to go through a maturity phase, someone's going to comment on, or they need to grow up or something like that.
The main moral of the story needs to be outlined in the first 5 pages.
Yeah. Pages 1 through 10 is the setup. You establish the world, the main character, this whole world before something happens. It's the baseline of the main character, your protagonist. Page 12 is where everything gets flipped, turned upside down. This
is normally something explodes, someone dies.
Yeah, you find out you're a wizard, Harry.
It's the inciting incident.
Pages 12 through 25 is the debate where the protagonist decides whether they're going to go on this journey, how they're going to go on this journey.
Normally it's say, I can't do this, I'm not up to this, I like my nice boring life. But then they are reminded that nice boring life might not necessarily continue if they don't go on this quest.
Yeah, you've got to give them a reason to do it. A reason to doubt it, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And then page 25, that's where Act 2 happens, according to Save the Cat. Whereas on this article, it's around about page 30. So there's a bit of difference here.
Hmm.
Around about that 25 to 30 mark, we have to set up everything, set up the world, make sure everything's making sense for the reader, making sure that the protagonist is going to go on this journey, whatever it is, by about that point.
Basically, by that point, we should know what world they're in, we should know the rules of that world under normal circumstances, and that there is some kind of threat that's going to be threatening that way of life.
Yeah. And when I mentioned I've fished out one of my old screenplays and I was reading it earlier, I was actually looking at it through the lens of the Save the Cat beat sheet because I had all the notes together with it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And I realised absolutely nothing happens in that first act that like establishes things. It's kind of like I was throwing them in the deep end and the action was already happening and it felt wrong.
Does it feel like a series of things that are happening but there's no consequence between them?
Yeah, and it just wasn't building up in the right way. And I think it's because I just completely mispaced that first act.
I mean, it's quite easy to do. I can do that as well because I'll get so pent up on having that big explosive moment at the beginning, and then I'll completely lose myself in terms of like where do I get from there to the characters on that quest to do whatever they need to do to get the world back to normal again.
And I've heard it said that if you have problems in Act 3, look at Act 1.
That can be the problem. That can be where the inciting incident of your script problem might be.
That and how you've established your character, your world. Again, back to world building, back to character building as previous. You know, we've got to set this all up really, really well within those first 30 pages.
I think that's true for one of mine as well. The police procedural script that I did at the beginning of this podcast, which is currently on the back burner. The reason why it's on the back burner is I haven't delved into my character enough to kind of know where it would need to go next. I need to go back into like the character and kind of figure out what they would do in this scenario and then kind of work my way through where I am at the moment by doing that. So working backwards to go forward.
Make sure your Act 1 is as tight as it can be.
Yeah.
So then that leads us on to Act 2. Act 2 in general, according to this diagram, it's split in two halves. How do you feel about that?
I am confused by it because obviously I get the whole fun and games bit. That's fine. That's just the plot is happening. But the whole B-story midpoint bit, I would have thought midpoint would have been halfway between Act 2. But
so the B-story starts as the Act 2 starts. And that's where you've got the subplot, you've got the side characters who are coming out. How do they affect the protagonist's journey? Is it their friendships? Is it other relationships? Is it something to do with the environment that they're in? Something to do with the world that they're in that runs concurrently alongside their journey?
So, for instance, in the movie Paul, you'll have Nick Frost and Simon Pegg as the main characters going on a journey. You'll have Paul, the alien, who is supposed to kind of be on the good guy's side, but also a bit of mystery around him. You'll also have Lorenzo Oil, who is played as the villain in this scenario. And you'll also have Sigourney Weaver, who is actually the true villain in that movie. And they all kind of... I'd say Sigourney Weaver would be at this point in the story of the B story, where a new character is introduced to kind of mix things up, shall we say.
Oh, I love Sigourney Weaver.
She's so good in everything she does. She's never been in a bad movie, apart from Alien 3. She's not been in a bad movie.
She is an icon. She's an absolute icon, that woman.
She is. I was going to say national treasure, but she's not. She's not British. She's a cinematic treasure.
The only thing I really liked about Finding Dory, this is totally off topic, was the bit where Dory's constantly going, "Hey, it's my friend Sigourney Weaver."
It's so
I
funny.
did that when we played Blockbusters and nobody got it.
I know, but it's been so long since I watched Finding Dory at that point. I had no idea, okay? It completely gone out of my mind. I'd only watched the film once.
It's the best.
My friend Sigourney Weaver's like, is it? Just sitting there like blank face like, what's she going on about?
Hey, it's my friend Sigourney Weaver.
Oh god, okay, yeah.
Back to structure. See, we've got no structure at all for the podcast.
Who needs structure when you've got friends like us?
Like Sigourney Weaver.
Like Sigourney Weaver. Well put, well put.
Thank you. I'm here all night. So we've kickstarted this subplot, yeah?
Yeah.
Going back to the point. So the next beat I've got here is fun and games, where it's the positives about the change, the fun, the exploration of the new world, the new powers, the new rules, everything that's new and fanciful through the protagonist's eyes.
This just reminds me of a Bruce Almighty when Jim Carrey has got God's powers and he thinks he's God's gift to women and he can do anything he wants. So he goes down the street, he blows a woman's skirt up, he can give is it his girlfriend or his wife, an orgasm at will. He can do whatever he wants.
The butt monkey.
The butt monkey. Who could forget the butt monkey? He can cause Steve Carell to say whatever he likes, even though it's complete gibberish.
Exactly.
It's the part where the hero feels like he's untouchable, or what they call the apotheosis, or apotheosis.
That was a very big word. So we've had the fun and games, we've had the butt-dwelling monkey.
So then the next section, after the highest point in the story, or conversely, if you're doing another version of the script, the lowest point in the story, would then become
the midpoint of Act 2. This is where you celebrate a false victory, or, you know, you have a massive setback, or something isn't quite going to plan.
This is when, in Bruce Almighty, to use the same analogy, all hell breaks loose, because what's the point in anything, because Bruce isn't answering people's prayers and stuff.
Yeah, this is where it goes on to the next beat according to Save the Cat, and your second half of Act 2 according to the, is it Sid Field paradigm that you've got open right now?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Sid Field paradigm, I found it. So we just talked about the pinch part 2 in the second half.
Yeah. So this is where things start to go downhill. According to Save the Cat, we've got between pages 55 and 75, bad guys close in, or things start to get more difficult for people.
The hero starts to realise the consequences of his actions.
Absolutely. So it doesn't always have to be like literal bad guys. It can be, you know, the weight of his own actions, his own emotions, something like that. Which then delves us even further to the next beat called All is Lost on page 75.
This is the lowest point. This is the opposite of the highest point.
We're going to push this protagonist to their edge, basically.
The worst thing that can possibly happen to this character is happening right now. And it's even worse than he imagined.
We're talking death, we're talking losing their way, we're talking massive emotional changes.
Losing their job, losing their car, losing their house.
It all goes
tits up.
And then after that, we've got Dark Night of the Soul, which is a reaction to All Is Lost beat.
This is the Woe Is Me. This will be the part in the Disney movie where they sing the Lament song, because they're all feeling a bit down about themselves.
Yep, which is technically your second half of the second act, the Pinch 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then by about page 85, 90, this is where we're breaking into the third act. We're going to resolve everything. You've got the finale, the climax, the grand hurrah.
Can he get everything sorted before the end of the countdown on this bomb that's going to go off? Can he convince the love of his life that he's not an absolute arsehole?
Yep, and then you've got that final image, that last beat, where everything is good. The resolution. So
we go back to where we were at the beginning of the script, but maybe things are slightly better than they were before. Or slightly worse.
That's just using two different versions of the three-act structure. Well, I say two different versions.
Because like the three-act structure is kind of the basis, whereas Save the Cat is kind of like that, but on steroids.
I can see where Save the Cat has a lot of benefits, because them beats, they're really strong beats. They give you something to aim for. And when I have been lost in my writing, I have kind of gone back to Save the Cat and gone, okay, whereabouts am I at? What kind of beat do I need to hit? So it has helped in structure in that sense.
It gives you a roadmap of where to go or where you've been.
Yeah, and what kind of tone I want to hit. If I was just saying Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, I have too much wiggle room as a pantser.
Yeah, that's like a big empty room with like one buffet table. Whereas with Save the Cat and with the three-act structure, it's more of a party. More
I've got lines on the floor. They tell me where to go.
It's like going through IKEA.
Yes!
So
Save the Cat is IKEA!
There's a title. Going through IKEA in your script. But yeah, so that the basic structure is kind of like, that's the main IKEA building, whereas Save the Cat is the lines on the floor to tell you which direction to go in. One direction, one way, nowhere else. Yeah, think of it as IKEA, but for scripts.
I've kind of talked your ear off about Save the Cat structure, but you had quite a few others on your list.
I do, yeah. The next one I want to talk about it's another quite common one that a lot of films use. It's more used in like the epic fantasy, so Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and it's the hero's journey structure. I think a lot of fairy tales as well tend to use this structure. It's been around for a very long time. This is very similar to what we mentioned before, how we say of the cat and the 3-act structure. It's more done in a circle rather than a straight line that you have to follow. Normally it will start off with everything is fine. The hero is living out their life as they normally would. There isn't any threats. It's okay, nothing to write home about. So just chilling in their own little world. Then there'll be some kind of call to adventure. So for Star Wars, it will be the get the distress call. For Lord of the Rings, it will be the... Oh, God, what was it in Lord of the Rings?
Bilbo going.
It was
Bilbo
Bilbo
going,
Baggins, sorry. It's been a while since I've seen that film.
Absolute side note here, but Frodo made the terrible choice. He should have stayed in the Shire.
He literally did not need to be there.
He could have chilled, grown some veggies.
Sam and Gollum could have done it without needing Frodo to ever leave the Shire. Everyone sleeps on Sam. Yes, you have the call to adventure, which is normally like the signal to start the story. This has happened. We need you to solve it. The next step after that would normally be, hero says, nah, I have no interest in that whatsoever. I am just a moisture farmer on Tatooine. I don't need anything else. I'm happy with my life. I am quite happy in the Shire. I don't want to move. I'm just a normal guy. I'm not a wizard, what you're talking about. And then there will be some kind of supernatural intervention. So obviously Hagrid will come and turn up in Harry Potter's doorstep. Something else happens to kind of spur the hero onto the quest. Then, of course, we get the crossing of the threshold. So Luke comes home, sees his aunt and uncle are dead, and considers, oh, maybe I need to get off this planet. Then we get to the stage of the belly of the whale. So in search of Ben Kenobi, he gets knocked out by Dustin Raiders. But Ben saves him and introduces him to the idea of Jedi and the Force, and that he needs to save the universe from the Sith. Then we've got Road to Trials. So this is all the training sections. This is all the stuff that Luke has to go through to prove that he can become a Jedi.
Is this where the montage usually comes in?
This is the montage. This is the workout montage. They're trying to build themselves up to defeat the bad guy. Then there is a meeting with another character. So mentioned previously in Slay of the Cat with the meeting of a new character being introduced. This could also be he meets the princess. He meets somebody of which he must save later on, or highly regard, shall we say. Then we've got Woman as Temptress, or it doesn't have to be a woman, it can be any object. So in Lord of the Rings, it's the ring, it's Gollum. Something is introduced that's trying to distract or turn the hero away from his quest. Then we've got an interesting section which is Atonement with the Father. The example we've got here is the reintroduction of Voldemort being the atonement from the Father. So that will probably, in Star Wars, it would be Darth Vader getting introduced, to use a better example. And then we've got the Apotheosis, best moment in the entire life. So Luke goes off in search of his friends before finishing his Jedi training because he thinks he's the best thing in the universe.
Do you find that throughout this hero's journey quest, that majority of the time there's a hero who thinks that they're suddenly a lot more ready for their quest than what they actually are?
Absolutely.
Like it's quite a common theme.
The hero has an ego, and the ego needs to be squashed. Then we've got the ultimate boon. So that would be, as you mentioned before, in Say of the Cat and the 3-act structure. You've got the highest moment, now you've got the absolute worst moment. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen to these characters?
Is this the undoing of the ego at this point?
This is the undoing of the ego, absolutely. As mentioned beforehand, this is the bit where you must be punished for being so egotistical and thinking you're on top of the world.
You will learn your lesson.
You will learn your lesson, exactly. Then there is a section which is refusal of the return. So this is the point where all hope is lost. The hero thinks that it couldn't possibly get any worse. He's considering giving up and going back to his normal life and not pursuing the quest he was on. This could be the point where the villain tries to convince the hero that actually no, he's on the good side and the hero is on the bad side, and he needs to join the villain's side to complete his quest, basically, and he's refusing to do that. Then we've got magical flight. In Star Wars, this is very, very obvious. This is the Luke going off to destroy the Death Star by flying his X-Wing down the corridor to fire his lasers down that air vent. Then we've got rescue from without. So I'm assuming this section will be the final blow on the villain, killing the villain, solving the riddle that gets you out of the trial, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So this one would be Death Star blows up. A crossing of the return threshold. This will be them going back to their normal life, but not quite getting there yet. Master of Two Worlds, this will be the reward. Does he save the princess or the prince? Does he get the riches that he wanted? Does he get fame? What does he get out of it? What's his prize? And then finally, freedom to live. So we're back to the beginning. Everything is the same as it was beforehand, but a little bit better. Or a little bit worse for the character.
So there's quite a lot of beats in that.
Quite a lot, yeah. My jaw hurts. It's arranged more of like a circle. So from there are occasions where you could not necessarily need to start from Call to Adventure. It could start from any point in that circle, but still follow the circle around, basically.
So if Lord of the Rings started the ring being destroyed, the ultimate
I guess you're wondering how I got here. Well, let me tell you, and it goes back to the beginning again. There's a freeze frame, there's some 80s music, then it goes back to the beginning again.
This wouldn't work in anything other than fantasy epics, would it?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it's best used in fantasy epics, I think, this Hero's Gen. I think with any other genres, it just seems like it's a lot of stuff to cram into the same scripts, I believe.
Yeah. If this was in a 90-minute script that's, say, following my time loop, it would just be so messy and rushed because trying to hit these different parts.
It would be my script at the moment, my police procedural script, but on steroids. So it's like you're overwriting to then edit back down again.
Yeah.
But too much happening if it wasn't an epic fantasy genre.
I've never come across this one before, so that's quite interesting. Thank you.
That's okay, no problem at all. I hope I haven't messed that up too much. I'll cut out all the bits I did.
While we're on the topic of Lord of the Rings,
yeah.
Do you know what a MacGuffin is?
No idea. What's a MacGuffin?
Oh, I keep asking you this, don't I?
My first thought was a MacGuffin was like a mistake that you didn't mean to do, but it ended up working out for you in the first place. But I don't know how that would play into structure. Can you enlighten me?
Kind of close, kind of not close at all.
Okay, that does not help me.
Okay, it wasn't close at all. I don't know why I said it's kind of close. When I was doing the research to make sure I get this right for you, to educate you on there, I found it was actually credited to the screenwriter Angus MacPhail, but Hitchcock will get the most recognition for it. So the idea of a MacGuffin is the plot centres around this item that you think is very important, but actually it doesn't add anything. It's just something to move the plot along, and it's actually the story around it, the characters that are the important part.
So my first thought is Rosebud, and I'm going to spoil the movie for people if you haven't watched Rosebud, but it starts off with the main character dying, and its last words are Rosebud. And the film after that point is trying to figure out what Rosebud is, what's the significance to the main hero that just died is. Loads of little conspiracies and stuff that happened at the time, and it finds out at the end of the movie just his childhood sled. All it is.
Oh. Is this a very old film?
It is a very old film, yeah. It's from the 50s.
Is that why we've got Rosebud in The Sims as a cheat?
What's the Rosebud cheat? Remind me.
Well, you type Rosebud and you get money. Anyway,
maybe it might be a reference. I don't know. Not heard that before. Go on.
So that would kind of be a MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that the characters really, really, really care about, but the audience doesn't really care as much. But it drives the plot forward.
Oh, okay. Would kind of like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction be another example of that as well?
Absolutely, yes, it would.
Everyone's like, "Ooh, what's in the briefcase? What's in the briefcase?" It's like, no, that's not actually part of the plot. It's just an accessory to what else is happening.
Yep. If you're structuring your story, this is just to the structure of the story, not the structure of the entire, logistics of it, around an item that only the characters care about, and it's not that important, that's a MacGuffin.
You have educated me because I had no idea about this, but now you said it, it makes total sense.
There is also the George Lucas version of a MacGuffin.
Oh my god, what is it?
So it's the same thing, but he thinks that the audience should care about the item.
I like what you did there.
I think one of the examples, and that's bringing back to Star Wars, is I think it's the plans to destroy the Death Star. There's plans for the Death Star. That's the MacGuffin.
Because it doesn't get rebuilt afterwards anyway. The first one gets blown up, and the second one gets built, but the first one getting destroyed is not as important now because the second one's out. Cut that. I have no idea what I'm talking about
there. Because it's after 9 o'clock.
I'm getting confused. We've got the opposite of that as well. The opposite of a MacGuffin, which is not really a structure, it's more of a narrative device, which is Chekhov's gun.
Okay, I've never heard of this.
Chekhov's gun it's a device. So the MacGuffin would be an item that appears to be important, and actually doesn't actually matter to the rest of the plot. It's more of a story. Whereas Chekhov's gun is the opposite. So Chekhov's gun is if you see a gun in Act 1, by Act 3, someone would have fired it. So this is not often used in like thrillers, in sitcoms. So if you see a bucket of water, it's going to get thrown on someone by the end of Act 3. Something along those lines. So innocuous things are incredibly important to the story later on.
So have you used any of these in your screenplays or stories?
I believe I have in my pizza script. I've used a Chekhov's gun, and that I will have to bring up the script to remember it. But I definitely used it in the pizza script. Something is brought up in the beginning that doesn't seem that important, and then it's brought back again later on to comedic effect. Oh yeah, so the main character in my pizza script calls head office, and the hold line on the other end is just an automated message saying hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up, over and over again. Like get out of the lift from the IT crowd. And then later on in the story, someone else, a customer will ring head office and get the same message. Go over and over and over and over again to another character who doesn't care. So that would be an example of Chekhov's gun. It's like, don't ring head office, and then they ring head office and find out that it's just an automated line that goes nowhere.
Yeah, that's actually quite funny. I like that.
I thought it was fun too. But yeah.
I think I've not come across half of these because I'm such a pantser with it. I will just wing it. Like I do adhere to the 3-act structure, and like I said, I've dipped into Save the Cat, but the rest of it, I kind of just make it up as I go along.
That's a very valid way of doing things as well. Like I kind of, like I said, I plan originally. I will do an outline. I will do a beat by beat structure of the script to refer to, but I also won't be like bound to it. I can like divert away from it to kind of like, oh, this character has done like a snowball effect on something else that's happened. Therefore, the script has to bend around that character now, so I can explore that avenue. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'll end up keeping that in the script when it's done, but it will give me that wiggle room to kind of walk around and in and out of the lines, basically.
Easier to write with that kind of structure in mind.
Yeah, it's kind of like a loose kind of structure.
But you kind of have a definitive thing to work towards.
Yeah, I will have something to refer back to. I'll have a roadmap of some kind.
Are you going to ever try Save the Cat, do you think?
I might have a look through it, yeah, because like I said, you mentioned it twice now and I haven't read it.
I will see you for your birthday.
But I do need to read it. It's in my bookshelf and I do need to read it. But yes, I will be looking into it because it'd be a nice, interesting way of like, see if I can split my scripts into more sections to make it more structured and also to refer back to it if I need to. It would be an interesting thing to try.
I can see where there's benefits to it, like having that goal to work towards each time, having the page count as well. It can be kind of, it's nice to have that target. It gives focus. But at the same time, it's really constricting. Like if I want to write a 200-page epic and just vomit it out, I don't want to be worrying about have I hit the beat on the correct page? Have I only got 110 pages overall to work with? Yes,
I completely agree with that. I actually found a nice, interesting quote about that, to be honest, regarding structure as a whole. And it's by a guy called Theo Friedman on a website called Studio Binder. And he said that script structure is something that some people swear by and others treat it as creative cancer. And I thought it was a perfect quote for it.
That's me and you.
I do have a structure. It's exactly yes. It is this. Because I'm one that will plan, but I don't like planning, but I'll have to plan it. Whereas you will just create it as creative cancer and be like, nope, not touching that. I'm going to go how I want.
The main thing is there's going to be as many different approaches to writing and to structure and to all of this as there are writers. We're all going to have our own unique way of doing it, even if we work in the same kind of framework. As long as it works, as long as you get something finished.
Don't take our list by absolute golden and saying it has to be these 3 things or these 4 things or these 5 things. Any structure you like, as long as your script flows competently and it goes from beginning, middle and end and it gets all them Benjamins. And, and you can relax on your super yacht and watch the books roll in. But yeah, it can be any structure you like, as long as obviously it is coherent enough for somebody else that isn't you to pick it up, read it, and know what you're talking about.
Don't get too bogged down in hitting exact beats on exact pages.
Yeah. Like, I don't take page numbers into account when I'm writing a script. Especially in the first draft. Don't even worry about page numbers in the first draft, because the first draft is a vomit draft. It can be anything you like. But as long as when you do go back to doing further run-throughs and further drafts of it, you do go by some structure. You've got some kind of framework, some kind of skeleton behind that script.
I don't take writing as seriously as I should either.
It can be one of those things that's kind of like quite drab and quite kind of solitary doing the whole writing thing, but I like the fact that we can kind of like step back and kind of have a bit of fun with it rather than just make it solidly like serious about the craft.
Yeah, I think if you get too serious and intense with it, you're going to take away the enjoyment.
Yeah,
we don't want
people to be listening to the podcast going, I'm bored now. We want people to be entertained.
We've got to have fun doing it.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I want to go through one more of the possible structures you can use in your script. This isn't an exhaustive list. There are other ones that you can go through that you can find about your script. But the one I want to lead you with is a single versus multiple protagonists structure. So the single one is probably the most basic kind of storyline ever. Just think of James Bond and the villain of that film. It's one guy versus another guy, or one girl versus another girl, or guy, girl, whatever. And it's basically just cop versus killer. And then who's going to succeed, who's going to fail, basically. Who's going to get incarcerated, who's going to die, that sort of thing.
Yep.
That's a simple one. Then you get to multiple protagonists, and things get a little bit more complicated.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, exactly, is another option. If you're going for the films like, again, we mentioned it beforehand, Pulp Fiction. That's another one that's got multiple protagonists in it. We've got things like 21 Jump Street, Brokeback Mountain, The Avengers, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay, yeah.
It'll be one script, but there'll be multiple character arcs happening at the same time. Or at different times, but they're all contained within one script. That's why I can make it a little bit more complicated, because you're basically doing 3-act structure, but for multiple characters in your script, and they're not always going to end up in the same place at the same time, but they can interject and move around.
Okay. Does that not dilute the experience of the protagonist? More than one protagonist, you're not going to be able to give as much expansion, as much page time to each one, so you can't expand their journey, you can't build their character arc as much, because you haven't got the white space, you've not got the pages for them, because you have to share it with other people. That's
why it's so complicated, because you can fall into that trap of, I've got 7 characters, and they've all got their own individual character arc, but only 5 of them are already present in the script, and the other 2 are kind of hanging out. For this kind of structure, you need to have your characters all running at the same time, no kind of stalling around, they all need to be picked up at the same time, even if they're doing different things. They all need to be running through the script at the same pace. Okay. Even if they end up dying earlier on, if they end up moving to a different part of the script later on, it all has to kind of like flow within the same thing.
Has their growth got to be parallel?
Absolutely, Andy. Even if their narrative isn't. So with Pulp Fiction, you've got characters like Vince, who will start off the story with the briefcase and ends up dying on the toilet. You'll have characters like Mia, who will start the story swimming and will die from a drug overdose later on.
Spoilers!
Sorry. But yeah, you'll have characters doing different things at different times, but when you run through them, they all kind of make sense when you go on repeated viewings, because you can track one character each time. But it is a more of a complicated structure for your scripts. It's more of like an advanced thing to do rather than someone who's just starting out. Unless you're really, really confident with your script writing.
If you can juggle several people's journeys and it be satisfactory, then I think you're a pretty good screenwriter there, because that's a lot to juggle in a tight space.
It is.
It's a lot to juggle just for one.
Then you have to do it for multiple people, and some of them won't survive the scripts maybe for whatever reason, if that's death or if that's moving away or going to a different dimension, that sort of thing. Whatever it is, they all have to kind of flow and grow for your script.
I think part of our problem as well is getting into the nitty-gritties of it isn't as fascinating as going through the writing journey itself.
Yeah, this is one of those podcasts where it's not going to be like as much as kind of like fun and games. It's more kind of like comprehensive, kind of looking at like the nitty-gritty, as you mentioned, of the writing world. It's not kind of singing and dancing kind of thing as you would normally do, but it's still important to know.
Yeah, it's good to know the structure, especially if you want to go into a professional sense. You've got to study it, you've got to get the format, the structure, the outlook, all of that you've got to do in a way to present it professionally. And I'm running out of words. That a term.
Welcome to my world.
I'm going to cross that bit out. But if you get really stuck in this kind of nitty-gritty detail, you're going to start to lose the creativity.
You're going to get lost in the weeds.
I just know from personal experience that if I get bogged down in making sure I hit certain beats at certain points and making sure I've got the structure exactly like these different academic versions of the structuring are, I'm going to lose my creativity to it. I'm going to constrain myself. I'm going to want to hit every beat because this is what this formula says. This is what this formula says works. I'm not going to give myself the freedom to flex around it, to make the story, to build the story and bring it down how I need to.
So, with regards to structure, would you say, because this is a thought that's coming to my head, that the kind of like bogging yourself down with page numbers and getting to a certain act by a certain page is something more for like later drafts? It's not for like first draft. This is kind of like once you've got your story crystallized in your head, you know where you're going from beginning to the end. Is it just kind of like later drafts trying to make it, mold it into something that's kind of more accessible to other people reading it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But if I'm doing it at this stage, like I said, I'm constraining myself. That's my own personal process. Like your process is totally different. I think from the initial vomit draft, you can go straight into structure, can't you? Into prescriptive kind of hitting beats.
Like even with my planning it and going by story beats, running along those beats, as I mentioned beforehand, I can come to a script where I'm like, a character says something different, and I'm like, oh, actually, no, that's interesting. I'll explore that for a little bit, and I kind of weave in and out of that pre-made structure, and then it ends up evolving the script as I'm writing it. I feel like if I did that later on, it would be less room for me to do that.
Wow. Once again, we are complete opposites.
We're like, if we get any closer, it would like Dragon Ball Z will just turn into like a big explosion because it's two sides of a magnet closing. No, two of the same magnet closing would repel.
But this is why I like talking about it with you, is because we've got my perspective, your perspective's the complete opposite, and yet it both works for us.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing anything wrong.
We're both creating, we're both generating, we're both completing work.
Yeah, I think we're doing everything right at the moment. It's just getting, for us, it's just getting over that first draft. It's getting that first draft out of the way. And you can go back on your second, third, fourth draft, whatever, to then kind of like structure it, make it seem a bit more, I don't know what the word is, kind of make it a bit more to fit into certain kind of restrictions.
Yeah. See, for me, you've got to mix the jelly before you put it in the mould.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, Andie. Once again, I completely agree with that. If you're going to make a jelly, you can't just like take it out of the packet, it's done. It has to melt it, you have to stir it, let it set, and then it becomes a jelly.
And I think my biggest message here that I hope whoever's listening to this can take away from this is whatever works for you works.
We're not here to say you're doing rubbish. Stop doing what you're doing. That's not how you're supposed to structure, blah, 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 blah. You completely disregard what we did at the beginning of this podcast. This is just framework that has worked for a lot of writers in the past, and it could help you if you get stuck.
And if not, don't get too stressed.
And don't sue us if it gets wrong.
Everything in this podcast is all alleged.
We have spoken to our lawyers.
And the views expressed are of our own.
The views of Andie, and not necessarily the views of Andie on the podcast.
Yeah, you can't come back and sue me.
I'm calling my lawyer now.
So before we log off, Ben, how much writing have you done this year?
You know what? That's a very good question to ask. Thank you, Andie. I've wrote a lot more than I would normally do. So at the beginning of this year, I had started writing the police procedural script that I had already kind of like gone through like the planning stages, but hadn't actually really put any pen to paper. That is now, I think, I'm still at the end of Act 1 on that, I think. Maybe beginning of Act 2. But I've wrote a lot on that. And then I've also started writing another idea at the same time of this podcast. So it's definitely increased my writing upload. And I have everything. I want to thank you, Andie, and everybody at home that's been watching this. Just kind of motivate me to keep writing.
You're welcome.
I won't even say checks in the post because I genuinely mean it. We've got unintentionally sappy at the end of this. This is nice.
Had to end it on a good note.
Yeah. But no,
Before
genuinely...
you put in all the bloopers.
Yeah, the bloopers are going to be crazy again. Genuinely, though, this has really helped me in terms of my writing, trying to get pen on paper or fingers on keyboard and get those scripts out.
I'm glad. I've got a little whiteboard on my... I've got many whiteboards on my desk, actually. And every day I'll write something, positive on it to start my day. Like, I try and start it with gratitude or with something that brings me joy. And today it says, today I'm grateful to my writing endeavours and the joy it brings me to work on them.
I love that. I love that a lot.
And then at the bottom it says, and more cat cuddles.
Cat cuddles, dog cuddles are very, very important. I had 2 of those today. Ghost jumped on me. I came home from work, I jumped on the sofa, Ghost like, I'm going to jump on you too. I ended up being cushion, which is nice. I'm not complaining. Some formats to look into. There are others as well we haven't mentioned today. But if we mentioned all of them, I think this podcast will probably be like 4 hours long. But if you have enjoyed this today, please do let us know on YouTube. You want to give us a like or comment saying, I love this podcast, do more. Or if you're on Spotify, give us a like, add it to your favorited podcasts if you can.
And you can leave us a comment.
Please do that. Please do that. That's all I have to say for tonight's episode. I hope you're all nice and cozy wherever you are, script writing today, or commuting on the bus, or wherever you're doing. I have been Finn.
And I've been Andie.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation.
This has been The Path to Publication.
Subscribble on YouTube.
Happy scribbles.
Happy scribbles!
Hello again. If I sound a little bit nasal, I've just come out of a very nasty cold, but I am well again, supposedly. Here are a couple more of the outtakes that were generated from this podcast. We just can't seem to control ourselves sometimes, and this is the aftermath. Enjoy.
Yeah, so if you were watching the mini-sode that we released a couple of weeks beforehand, so I just think you do the take 2. That set me off.
I need a cockable.
Try that again.
Guys, this is Path to Publication, Scene 3, and marker.
Interior, Finn's bedroom. Yeah, so I'm not walking all around the house this time as well. I think we can burn all of this. Do you want to take us through, Andie, like all the individual parts of that 3-act structure if you have that? If you don't, it's fine. I've got it in front of me.
Oh my god, send the link on Discord.
No! Whoops.
I don't fucked up. I thought I was prepared this time. I am not. The butt monkey.
The butt monkey. Who could forget the butt monkey? He can cause... I've forgotten his name. What's the actor's name? American Office. Steve, somebody or other.
Steve Carell?
Steve Carell, there we go. Forgotten the name. Thank you. Ash told me the right name as well. You going?
I'm going.
Have a nice night.
And he says, have a nice night.
You come lock me out.
Okay. Shove the door in your face. Yes, I'll come see you off. I'll be back in a second, Andie.
No problemo.
I'm going to keep it running. I'm recording for 26 minutes so far. Come on, then.
Doo doopy 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 dum dum doopy doopy dum dum dee. Isn't that right, Ralph? This is my song, my very own song. Oh, I'm singing that. Finn's just gonna listen to this back and be like, "Oh, she's singing." Oh, excuse me, Ralph.
2 hours later.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? She's drawn a smiley face on her whiteboard. So I've come back to just an inanely smiling face. I mean...
Where's the screenshot button?
It's very lifelike.
It looks just like me, doesn't it?
It looks absolutely perfect. If SpongeBob had a whiteboard cousin, that would be it.
This is what happens when I get left on my own. Unfortunately, to make that smiley face, I had to sacrifice my notes. So
No.
yeah, I made a decision.
Do you stand by your decision?
I do. I stand by my decision. It's a very smiley face.
Luke going off to destroy the Death Star by flying his X-Wing down the corridor to fire his... Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I found that it's actually credited to the screenwriter called Angus McPhail. I can't read my own handwriting. What is that?
To Angus, I cannot read my own handwriting. I know him well.
Angus McPhail. But you'll find that Alfred Hitchcock gets most rest. The hair.
Alfred Hitchcock.
But we'll try that one again. Take two.
I'm having fun. You having fun?
I'm having fun. I just wish I had more tea, but it's past tea time now.
I wish I had more coffee too.
No, I don't understand how you drink coffee at night.
I don't know. For some reason, like, I don't do it every night. I will say that. I actually exaggerate. I don't do it every night. Not necessarily because I'm tired or anything like that. It just kind of put me on the same level that I was beforehand. It kind of works for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then just kind of crash afterwards.
To be fair, you are up later than me. The amount of times that you've texted me going, oh, I'm still editing at 11 o'clock and I'm already asleep.
Honest thinker. Yeah, that's totally me. That's totally me. So I have to get it done, Andy. I've got a dog to look after. I've got a husband to look after.
You are.
My time is very, very tight. How long have you been holding up that sign? Andy's drew a picture of me on her whiteboard now. So we've got an Andie and we've got a me. And I'm quite impressed with the stubble, by the way. I have to admit, it's a prettier version of me. I'll have to say that.
It looks like a more tired version of you.
Yeah, I love it.
Sorry, I get mischievous sometimes.
It's fine. It's fine.
Should have seen me at school.
I have been Finn.
And I've been Andy.
I hope you've enjoyed us on this. I hope you've joined us on this conversation. Fuck.
Hang on, this is why you need it, right?
Right.
This is why. Wait. This is going to be dramatic. I'm going to do it.
This
is why you need a sticky note.
I need it writing down. I'll write that on a whiteboard. Okay. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. Yes, did it. Sorry.